Ready to dive into some fascinating Jewish mystical concepts.
Always.
Today, we're exploring ideas about personal growth and transformation.
Oh, interesting.
We were inspired by this YouTube video from Impulsa Tu Alma. It uses the biblical story of the spies sent into Canaan
Okay.
as like a metaphor for conquering our own inner promised lands.
I like that.
What I thought was really cool was how the video uses the analogy of clothing and aroma
Mm.
to, represent our thoughts, words, and actions,
Oh, wow.
and how they can like uplift us or drag us down.
Right. So it's kind of like what we wear internally.
Yeah, and how
Yeah.
that affects, not just us, but the people around us.
Exactly.
So before we even get into all of that, the video starts by talking about those three types of people described in the Talmud:
Hmm.
the righteous, the wicked, and the intermediate.
Right.
And it says that most of us fall into that intermediate category.
The Talmud actually uses the term tzaddik for the righteous,
Oh.
Rasha for the wicked, and Benoni for that intermediate person.
Okay.
And the video emphasizes that this Benoni, is constantly battling between their good and bad inclinations.
Right. So that makes me think of that story about the Talmudic scholar Rabbah,
Yeah.
who was like so immersed in Torah study
Oh, yes.
that even the angel of death couldn't touch him.
Exactly. It took a deliberate distraction to break his concentration.
Really?
Yeah. Only then could the angel of death finally do his job.
Wow, so that's a pretty dramatic example.
Yeah.
It kind of makes those of us who are, well, less than perfectly righteous feel a bit better.
Right.
Like if this guy, this great scholar Rabbah, had to battle his own inner, I don't know, stuff,
Mm.
then maybe it's okay that we're not always perfectly good either.
That's a really good point. It really highlights that, even the most spiritual people experience these struggles.
Right.
We're all works in progress, constantly striving.
Yeah. So how does this idea of the Benoni connect to the idea of conquering our own promised land?
Well, the video links this back to the story of Isaac asking Jacob to bring him some delights.
Okay, so how do delights relate to all of this?
The Zohar.
Uh-huh.
That foundational text in Kabbalah.
Yes, yeah.
It explains this request for delights is a metaphor for the two types of spiritual service that God finds pleasurable.
Okay.
And you see, for the righteous person, their service is just naturally sweet, delightful, because their thoughts and actions are already aligned.
Right.
But for the intermediate person,
Yeah.
there's a process of transformation. Like, we have to actively work to refine our thoughts and actions, turn our struggles into something delightful.
I love that, like turning our struggles into something beautiful and delightful.
Exactly.
But how does this actually work? How do we
Yeah.
start refining ourselves and conquering our own promised lands?
Well, that's where the story of the spies sent into Canaan comes in. And the video points out that there were actually two instances of this happening.
Yeah.
First with Moses and then later with Joshua.
So what's the difference between those two missions?
Well, with Moses, the mission was optional. It involved exploring, like, the whole land of Canaan.
Mm-hmm.
But with Joshua,
Yeah.
it was mandatory. And they were focused on this very specific target, Jericho.
Interesting. So how does the video interpret that difference?
Well, it explains that exploring all of Canaan represents, conquering all of our animalistic tendencies,
Okay.
refining every aspect of ourselves.
That's a pretty tall order.
It is. That's a task for the truly righteous, those who've already reached a high level,
Right. But conquering Jericho,
Yeah,
that represents something more fundamental, right?
exactly. Conquering our thoughts, words, and actions.
Ah, okay. So it's like if we want to reach our full potential,
Yes,
we have to start with mastering the basics.
exactly. Our thoughts, our words, and how we act. And here's where the video makes a really interesting connection.
Okay.
The Hebrew word for Jericho, Yericho,
Mm-hmm.
is actually related to the word riach, which means aroma.
Wait, so conquering Jericho is like conquering a bad smell. Okay, now I'm really curious.
Well, not a bad smell exactly. It's more like conquering the ability for our thoughts, words, and actions to give off like a negative aroma.
Okay.
It's about refining those things
Right.
so that, they emanate something positive,
Mm-hmm.
uplifting.
Okay.
And it kind of reminds me of that story in the Bible about Jacob,
Yeah.
bringing Isaac food while he's wearing those clothes that smelled of the hunt.
Uh-huh.
The video points out how even though the aroma started out kind of earthy,
Yeah.
it was transformed into something heavenly.
I see where you're going with this.
Yeah.
It's like saying even if our initial thoughts or actions, aren't so great,
Right.
we have the power to transform them into something better, something more delightful.
Exactly.
So taking that analogy further, it's as though we're always dressing ourselves, right, with
Yeah.
our thoughts, words, and actions.
Yes.
And the aroma, we give off depends on the choices we make.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And just like, we wouldn't wear the same outfit to a wedding as we would to like a job interview,
Right.
we need to be mindful of the internal clothing we choose,
Right. Right.
depending on, the situation and the impact we want to create.
Hmm.
It's a powerful concept, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's like we're constantly sending out these signals.
Right. Whether we realize it or not.
Yeah.
And by becoming more conscious of them, we can actually shape our own nature
Hmm.
and even our impact on the world around us.
That's really powerful. So this whole idea of conquering our inner Jericho,
Yeah.
our thoughts, words, and actions, I mean, it's really resonating with me.
Good.
But how does that, lead to conquering the whole land? What about all those other aspects of ourselves that we need to work on?
Well, the video suggests that mastering these fundamental elements, our thoughts, words, and actions, it lays the foundation for deeper spiritual refinement.
Okay.
It's like building a house. You need a strong foundation before you can add the walls, the roof, and all those beautiful details.
Right.
Conquering our Jericho sets us up for greater spiritual growth and understanding.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So we're not just aiming for these superficial changes.
Yeah.
We're talking about a much deeper transformation.
Exactly. Something that starts from within.
Right. Okay.
And this idea, inner transformation, it kind of ties into a much larger concept in Jewish mysticism,
Oh, okay.
the Messianic era.
Okay.
Remember how the prophet Isaiah talked about a time when the knowledge of God will fill the earth as the waters cover the sea?
Yeah. That's beautiful.
It is. It's a powerful image.
Yeah.
It's a world transformed, a world saturated with divine awareness.
So how does conquering our own personal Jerichos, how does that contribute to this grand vision of a world filled with God's knowledge?
That's a great question. I think it suggests that, each of us plays a part in bringing about this messianic era through our own individual refinement.
Okay.
When we conquer those internal battles,
Yeah.
when we choose those thoughts, words, and actions that are aligned with like our highest selves,
Mm-hmm.
we're not just improving ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
we're contributing to a greater, like a collective shift towards goodness and light.
So it's not just about like personal growth then, it's also about our interconnectedness.
Exactly.
And how like our individual efforts can create this ripple effect that impacts the world around us. I love that.
It's pretty amazing, isn't it?
It is. But I'm still kind of stuck on something. We've been talking about the spies who successfully conquered Jericho, right?
Yeah.
But what about those other 10 spies?
Oh.
The ones who, brought back a negative report about the land and caused the Israelites to wander in the desert for 40 years. How do they fit into all of this?
That's a really insightful question. And the video actually addresses that. It draws this fascinating parallel between those 10 spies and the 10 Sephiro of the soul.
Hold on, the 10, well, you lost me there.
The Sephiro.
Okay.
They're like this central concept in Kabbalah in Jewish mysticism.
Okay.
Think of them as 10 emanations of divine energy
Mm-hmm.
that exist within each of us, representing different aspects of our being,
Okay.
like different facets of our personality and our potential.
Okay, I'm starting to get it.
Yeah.
So are you saying that those 10 spies represent those 10 Sephiros somehow becoming, perverted or distorted?
Exactly. You got it.
Mm.
They weren't prepared for the task of, conquering the land, both the physical land and that inner landscape,
Right.
because they hadn't yet refined their own internal world.
Mm.
They let fear and doubt cloud their judgment, and ultimately their negativity led to the Israelites' prolonged exile in the desert.
So those, perverted Sephiro,
Yeah,
those distorted aspects of themselves held them back.
exactly. And you could say, just like those spies needed 40 years to refine themselves and, gain a deeper understanding,
Right.
we too might need time and effort to conquer our own internal struggles.
So we have to work on, purifying those 10 Sephiros.
That's a powerful way to put it. And the video emphasizes this process,
Yeah.
this process of conquering those inner challenges. It's an ongoing journey. It's a daily battle. It's about consistently choosing our thoughts, our words, our actions wisely.
It's a good reminder, I guess,
Yes.
that spiritual growth isn't, a one-time event, but rather a lifelong journey.
Absolutely. It's this continuous process of refinement and transformation.
And it circles back to that idea of dressing ourselves appropriately, doesn't it?
It does.
We need to be vigilant, aware of the clothing of our thoughts, words, and actions,
Yes.
and strive to choose those that uplift and inspire rather than those that drag us down, both individually and collectively. You know, it's amazing to think that we have this incredible power to shape our own reality, both internally and externally,
It is pretty incredible.
simply by making conscious choices about how we think, speak, and act.
Yeah.
And what I find really empowering is the video's point that those choices eventually become our nature. We can literally transform ourselves from the inside out.
Yeah, it really is. It's like realizing that we're not just these passive passengers in our own lives, you
Right.
know.
Right?
We're these active creators of our own experience. And what I find even more encouraging, like, is that the video reminds us that this power, you know,
Yeah,
it isn't some exclusive gift, right? It's available to everyone.
exactly. We all have the potential.
We all have that potential to conquer our inner Jerichos and, you know, refine those Sephiroth and contribute to a more positive and enlightened world.
Yeah.
But it's one thing to have the potential, right?
Right.
And another to actually make it happen.
Yeah.
So where do we even begin? What are like the practical steps to start experiencing this kind of transformation?
Well, the video offers some really grounded advice here.
Okay.
It suggests starting small.
With these daily acts of refinement,
Okay.
instead of trying to, you know, overhaul our entire lives overnight, it's about bringing more awareness to our thoughts, choosing our words carefully,
Right.
and acting with kindness and compassion, even in those, you know, those little everyday moments.
So it's like we're being mindful of the aroma we're emitting all the time,
Exactly.
not just on special occasions.
Exactly.
Oh.
And remembering that, you know, those seemingly insignificant choices,
Yeah.
they have a ripple effect.
Yeah.
They impact not just us, but the people around us too.
Right.
It's about recognizing that power, that responsibility.
So instead of just like going through the motions each day, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We need to be more intentional, more conscious of those choices, knowing that they shape who we become and the kind of world that we create. It's a pretty inspiring challenge, don't you think?
I agree. And the more we practice this, you know, this kind of mindfulness, the more natural it becomes. It's like training a muscle.
Right.
The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
So by consistently choosing, you know, those thoughts, words, and actions that align with our best selves,
Yeah.
we can actually reprogram our brains. We can transform our very nature. We can refine those Sephiroth, those facets of our soul,
Right.
and contribute to a more harmonious world,
Yeah.
like that messianic era that we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. And it's important to remember this isn't just, you know, some feel-good new agey concept.
Right.
This is deeply rooted in Jewish mystical tradition. It's about tapping into that spark of the divine that exists within each of us and using it to create a more beautiful and harmonious world.
I've got to say, this deep dive has been so eye-opening.
Yeah, me too.
It's given me a whole new perspective on personal growth and transformation. I'm definitely going to be more aware of the clothing I'm wearing, both internally and externally. And I love how this whole exploration has connected these, you know, ancient mystical ideas
Yeah.
with like practical steps we can take each day.
It has been a fascinating conversation.
It has.
And hopefully it's inspired our listeners to take on that challenge
Yeah,
of conquering their own personal Jericho.
absolutely. It leaves us with a lot to think about. You know, what clothing are we wearing today? What kind of aroma are we sending out into the world? And what steps can we take to step into our own promised land of inner peace and fulfillment?
Those are great questions to reflect on.
Yeah.
And, you know, even small changes can make a big difference over time.
Yeah.
The important thing is to just start
Right.
and to keep moving forward on that journey of self-discovery and transformation.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Jewish mysticism and the power of personal growth.
My pleasure.
We hope you'll continue exploring these ideas and discovering the incredible potential that lies within you.